The Dream Master and the Old Legends. A gentle story about Liva, dreams, courage, and finding her own way to belong. There was once a girl named Liva. Liva was not a girl who made a lot of noise. She could laugh, she could play, and when something truly interested her, her eyes could shine like little lanterns. But when there were many people, many voices, many faces, and many things changing all at once, the world felt as if it moved too close, as if every sound had tiny sharp edges, as if every look asked a question, as if every word had to be understood quickly before it ran away. Liva really did try. She tried to join in when the others ran around and changed games again and again. She tried to smile at the right moments. She tried to answer when someone asked her something. She tried to guess when she was supposed to come closer and when she was supposed to stay back. But people were difficult. They said one thing with their mouths, and sometimes something different with their eyes. They could sound happy and still speak sharply. They could say, "Come and join us," and then change the rules just when Liva had learned them. They could suddenly become quiet, and Liva would not know why. And when they laughed, she could not always tell if they were laughing with her or at her. Things were easier. Things stayed where you put them. A stone could be cold at first and then grow warm in your hand. A cup could have the same shape every morning. A soft teddy bear could be soft in the same way again and again. A little wooden button could be turned between her fingers when the world became too much. A lamp could be switched on and give the same calm light. Things did not expect Liva to guess their mood. So Liva collected quiet things. Not expensive things. Not things other people would necessarily notice. A stone with a white line through it. A feather that was almost grey but not quite. A little key that did not fit any door. A piece of sea glass, rounded and softened by the waves. A button from an old coat. A dried flower pressed between 2 pages of a book. A small piece of string tied with 3 knots. She kept them in a box under her bed. And when a day had been hard, Liva opened the box and placed the things in rows. The stone first, then the feather, then the key, then the glass, then the button, then the flower, then the string. The order mattered, not because anyone had told her it should matter, but because the order made Liva feel that the world could still be arranged. One evening, after a day that had felt especially sharp around the edges, Liva sat with the box in her lap. There had been group work at school. Group work was almost the worst phrase Liva knew. Group work meant trying to understand the task, but also trying to understand the others. Who was deciding things? When was she allowed to speak? When had she said too little? When had she said too much? There had been chairs scraping across the floor, papers rustling, voices talking over each other, and someone saying, "You are so quiet." As if Liva did not already know, later one of the others had said, "She does not really want to be part of it." That had hurt, because Liva did want to be part of it. She just did not always know how. Now she sat in her room and held the little key in her hand. "I wish people had locks," she whispered. "Then maybe I could find the right key and understand them." Her room was small, and the lamp glowed warmly. Outside, the sky was deep blue. Liva lay down with the key in her hand. She had not meant to fall asleep holding it. But her eyelids became softly heavy, and the edges of her thoughts began to blur. Just before sleep took her, she thought the key grew warm. Not hot like fire, warm like something that had been waiting a long time to be used. And then the dream began. Liva stood on a path, not an ordinary path. It was made of moonlight, earth, and tiny sparks that looked like stars that had fallen down and decided to show the way. On both sides, trees rose tall and silent. The forest was not completely dark, but it was not bright either. There were small sounds everywhere. Leaves whispering, branches creaking, and far away, water trickling over stones. Liva was still holding the key. "Hello?" she said. Her voice sounded small between the trees. Something rustled. Liva froze. At the foot of a tree, a pile of leaves lifted itself up. Then it blinked. The leaf pile grew arms and a little hat made from a chestnut shell. "You are standing on my path," said the leaf pile. Liva stepped back. "Sorry." "Most people say that when they do not know what else to say," the creature grumbled. "That is perfectly fine." "My name is Rumble." Liva stared at him. "Are you real?" That is a very large question for this late in the evening, said Rumble. In dreams, real does not always mean the same thing as it does in the daytime. But I am real enough. Liva did not know how to answer that, so she said, okay. Rumble nodded, as if okay was a very wise thing to say. You have a key, he said. Liva looked down at her hand. It does not fit anything. That is what all keys think, said Rumble, until they find the right door. Do you know where the door is? Liva asked. No, said Rumble, but I know who we can ask. He began to trundle along the path. Liva followed him, because that seemed better than standing completely alone. The forest changed as they walked, not quickly, just enough for Liva to understand that this was not an ordinary forest. Some trees had little lanterns hanging in their branches, some roots moved aside when someone needed to pass. Once, Liva saw an owl sitting high above them, watching with large, calm eyes. Is that owl dangerous? Liva whispered. Unease? Said Rumble. No, but she can see when something is afraid. That does not sound very nice. It can be nice to be seen properly, said Rumble, as long as the one who sees you is not in a hurry to change you. Liva said nothing. It sounded strange. And a little good. They came to a stream. The water was clear and dark at the same time. It did not only reflect the trees, it reflected things Liva had never said out loud. Beside the stream stood a tall, slender figure with hair like threads of silver. The mirror keeper, said Rumble. She does not always show what you want to see, but she often shows what you need to see. Liva narrowed her eyes. That sounds unpleasant. The mirror keeper turned toward her. Only if you think you must see everything at once, she said. Liva held the key a little closer. I want to understand people, she said, but people are very difficult. Things feel easier. The mirror keeper nodded slowly. Things are honest in a quiet way. Liva looked up, surprised. Yes, said the mirror keeper, a stone usually does not pretend to be a feather. A cup does not change its voice in the middle of a conversation, and a key does not become angry just because someone holds it the wrong way. Something loosened a little in Liva's chest. Exactly, she whispered. The mirror keeper pointed to the water. Look. Liva looked down. At first, she only saw her own face. Then the water changed. She saw herself in class. She saw her hands hiding inside her sleeves. She saw her eyes moving between the others' faces. She saw her mouth open just a little, then close again because someone else was already speaking. And then she saw something she had not noticed before. Another girl in the group had looked at her several times, not angrily, more like a question. Maybe that girl had been waiting for Liva to say something. Maybe she had not known how either. The picture in the water changed again. Now Liva saw her box of quiet things. The stone, the feather, the key, the glass, the button, the flower, the string. But in the dream, each thing glowed softly. They are not only things, said the mirror keeper, they are bridges. Bridges? Asked Liva. Yes, you have become attached to them because they are understandable. That is not wrong. Some people must begin with the quiet things before they can move closer to the living ones. Liva looked at the key. So I am not wrong. The mirror keeper became very still. Even the stream became still. Then she said, No, Liva, you are not wrong. A warm silence opened between them. You may simply be built with a finer listening instrument for the world than many other people. Liva felt her eyes grow hot. But why does that make everything so hard? Because the world often shouts at those who feel finely, said the mirror keeper. Rumble sniffed. And because people sometimes think the one who says the least has the least inside. Liva wiped her cheek quickly. That is not true. No, said Rumble, it is very rarely true. The mirror keeper touched the water with one finger. You have come here because the dreams want to teach you something. Dreams? Said Liva. Dreams are not only pictures that come at night, said the mirror keeper. Dreams are weavers. They take the loose threads of the day, what frightened us, what we did not understand, what we missed, what we hoped for, and they try to weave it together so the heart can look at it without daylight in its eyes. Liva thought about her dreams. Some were beautiful, but some were frightening. Some became enormous, as if a small worry from the day had turned into a whole mountain at night. But why do some dreams become worse? She asked. Because feelings can wear masks, said the mirror keeper. A little unease can arrive as a great shadow. A misunderstanding can become a whole maze. Loneliness can look like an ocean, but when you learn to recognize the masks, you can speak with them. Can you control your dreams? Asked Liva. Rumble and the mirror keeper looked at each other, then a deep voice spoke from among the trees. You can learn to guide how you meet them. Liva turned around. Between the trunks stood a great tree being. He had shoulders of bark, moss on his arms, and eyes that were deep and green. Holdfast, said Rumble. Holdfast bent down a little, and his branches rustled gently. Dreams should not always be forced, said Holdfast, but they can be gentled. Like a shy horse that learns your hand is not there to hurt it. How? Asked Liva. Holdfast reached out one branch. From it hung a small lantern. It looked like a lantern someone could hold in their hand, but no flame burned inside it. Instead, a small light floated there, warm as a breath. This is a dream light, said Holdfast. It is the first tool. Liva took the lantern from him. It was light in her hand. If a dream becomes too large, said Holdfast, you can lift the light and say, I want to see what you really are. And then? Asked Liva. Then the shadow may grow smaller, not always gone, but clearer. Rumble searched inside his leaves and pulled out a tiny whistle made from a hollow twig. This is the second tool, he said. If you get lost in a dream, you can call for help. Not because you are weak, but because even dream masters have friends. The mirror keeper held out a small bowl. It was made of water, and yet it kept its shape. This is the third tool, she said. If you do not understand what is happening, you can look again from another angle. Liva accepted all three tools. So am I a dream master now? Rumble laughed so hard that 3 leaves fell off him. No, no, you are a dream apprentice. Dream masters belong to the old legends. Do they really exist? Asked Liva. Unease the owl landed silently on a branch above them. There have always been children who could wake lightly inside a dream, she said. Not with their eyes, with their hearts. They could say, this is a dream. I am here. I can choose the next small step. Liva looked up at her. Were they not afraid? Yes, said Unease, but they learned that fear in dreams is not always a wall. Sometimes it is a door with a very dramatic voice. Liva almost smiled. A door with a dramatic voice. Very dramatic, said Rumble solemnly. Some doors have no sense of timing. Holdfast lifted a branch and pointed deeper into the forest. There is a place you must visit. Is it far away? Asked Liva. Only inward, said the mirror keeper. Liva did not usually like it when grown-ups said things like that. But here it almost made sense. They followed the path. The farther they walked, the stranger the forest became. The trees no longer looked only like trees. Some looked like tall chairs. Some looked like blackboards. Some looked like people whispering without sound. Liva felt her unease grow. I do not like this, she said. Then use the light, said Holdfast. Liva lifted the lantern. I want to see what you really are, she said. The light grew warmer. The tall shadows trembled. A tree that looked like a blackboard shrank and changed into a piece of paper with an assignment on it. A tree that looked like a whispering figure became the memory of children talking together. And a dark shape between the trunks became the feeling of not knowing where to sit. Liva's shoulders sank. It is just the day, she said. Yes, said the mirror keeper, but at night it put on a costume. The unknown often looks much more frightening that way. They walked on and came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a large round table. Around the table sat many beings. Some had feathers, some had leaves, some were small as cups, some were long as shadows. Some had faces Liva could hardly read. Some had too many eyes. One had no eyes at all, but listened with its hands. Liva stopped suddenly. I do not want to go in there. That is the other people's table, said Rumble. I do not know how to do other people, said Liva. That is why we are here, said the mirror keeper. At the table, everyone was talking at once. Not loudly, but enough that everything shimmered and flickered. Come here. No, sit there. Do you want to play? Why will you not say anything? Do not do that. That is not what I meant. You look angry. Are you angry? Why are you looking away? Are you looking at me? Do not say so much. The words turned into little birds and flew around Liva's head. She put her hands over her ears. Stop, she whispered. But they did not stop. Use the whistle, said Unease. Liva fumbled for the small whistle. She blew into it. The sound was not loud at all. It was clear, like one drop falling into a bowl. All the word birds froze in the air. The beings at the table became quiet and looked at her. Liva wanted to disappear, but Holdfast stood behind her like an entire forest. Rumble stood by her foot like a little pile of courage. The mirror keeper stood beside her with calm water in her hands. Unease sat above her, blinking slowly. Liva took a breath. I cannot understand you when everyone talks at the same time, she said. Her voice trembled, but it came out. A small being with feathers on its cheeks tilted its head. We did not know that. I also do not always know when I am allowed to speak, said Liva, and sometimes I look away because I listen better that way. Not because I do not care. A shadow with long arms placed its hands on the table. I thought you did not like us. I do not always know if I can, said Liva honestly, but I want to try, just not so fast. Everything became quiet. Not bad quiet, the kind of quiet where something new has room. Then a little cup being pushed out a chair. Would you like to sit here? There is a little distance from the others, and you can see the door. Liva looked at the chair. It was not in the middle of everything. It was a little to the side of the table, but still with them. Can someone be part of things from the side? She asked. Of course, said the cup being. Some of us are mostly side with. Liva sat down. It felt strange, but not wrong. At the table, the beings began talking again, this time one at a time. Sometimes they forgot and spoke over each other, but then Liva lifted the whistle a little, and they remembered. After a while, Liva placed her key on the table. I like things better than people, she said. Or, it is not because I do not like people. Things are just easier. The cup being nodded. I like things too. I am almost a thing myself. Rumble whispered, a very fine thing. The cup being looked proud. On the other side of the table, a small feather girl took a stone from her pocket. I have a stone too, she said. Liva looked at her in surprise. You do? Yes, it helps when the voices become too sharp. One of the long shadows pulled out a spool of thread. I have this. I wind it around my finger when I have to wait. A being with many eyes showed a little button. I collect buttons because they are like small moons with holes. Liva felt something open inside her. She had thought her things meant she was farther away from other people, but maybe things could also be ways in. Bridges, as the mirror keeper had said. Would you like to see my stone? Liva asked quietly. The feather girl nodded. Liva held out the stone. The feather girl took it carefully. It has a white line. Yes, said Liva. I think it looks like a road. Or a zipper in a mountain, said the feather girl. Liva thought about that. She had never thought of it that way before. And then she laughed. Not loudly, but truly. It was the first time in the dream that Liva sat at a table with others without feeling that she had to become someone else. When they left the clearing, everything was not easy. But Liva had learned something. You could say, not everyone at once. You could say, I listen better when I do not look directly. You could sit a little to the side and still be included. And you could share a thing before you shared all of yourself. The path led them out of the forest and down toward the sea. The sea was smooth and deep blue. Upon it lay small islands, like dreams that had not yet decided whether they wanted to be memories or hopes. Boats sailed between them, and above the sea, high but not too high, a boy drifted with his arms stretched out to the sides. He lowered a little, lifted a little, lowered again. He was being carried by a wind he had clearly learned how to hear. The flyer, said Unease. Can I do that too? Asked Liva. In dreams, you can learn many things, said the mirror keeper, but first you must learn your own tool. My own? Rumble pointed to the key in her hand. You have been carrying it the whole time. Liva looked at the little key, but there is still no door. Yes, there is, said Holdfast. He pointed out over the water. There, in the middle of the islands, stood a door. Not on an island, not on a bridge, just standing on the surface of the sea. It was tall and blue, with stars carved into the wood. There was nothing to see behind it, because it was closed. Liva walked out onto the water. In dreams, you can sometimes do that, as long as you do not think about it too hard. The water carried her. When she reached the door, she heard sounds behind it. Whispers, laughter, wind, footsteps, maybe someone crying, maybe someone singing, maybe all her dreams at once. "I do not know if I dare," she said. Unease flew down and settled on the doorframe. "Courage is not opening without fear," she said. "Courage is opening with a little help." Liva placed the key in the lock. It fit. Of course it did. The door opened. Behind it was not a room. It was a great floating library. Shelves hung in the air, and books flew quietly around like birds. On the walls were pictures of dreams, some beautiful, some strange, some a little frightening, and some so silly that Rumble immediately began to snicker. In the middle of the library stood an old book on a table. The book was larger than Liva's pillow and bound in dark blue cloth. On the cover, in silver letters, were the words, "The Old Legends of the Dream Masters." Liva touched the book. It opened by itself. On the first page it said, "A Dream Master is not someone who controls everything. A Dream Master is someone who whispers. A Dream Master is someone who remembers that even in the unknown, one can choose the next small step." The page turned. A Dream Master can light a lamp in dark dreams. Call for help when the dream becomes too large. Look behind the mask of what frightens them. Make doors where there were only walls. And change the direction of a nightmare with a calm heart. Liva read the old letters slowly. "Can I become one of them?" "You have already begun," said the Mirror Keeper. "But I cannot control everything," said Liva. "You do not need to," said Holdfast. "But it says great magic," said Liva, pointing to the next page. There was a picture of a figure standing in the middle of a storm dream. Around the figure flew dark birds, falling towers, ocean waves, and shadows. But the figure held a lantern in one hand, a key in the other, and beneath their feet a small green island began to grow. Then Swallow, the little bird with mist wings, flew in through an open book. "Great magic often begins with small choices," she said. Liva looked at her. "You are from the flying dream." "I am from the wind between dreams," said Swallow. "I come when someone needs to learn that they do not have to stay stuck." The book began to glow. Suddenly, the library changed. The shelves grew taller, and the sounds behind the walls grew louder. A shadow slid forward between the books. It was long and dark, with 1,000 faces that kept changing. Liva froze. "What is that?" The Mirror Keeper stepped closer. "That is the Great Unreadable." The shadow whispered with many voices. "They do not like you. You said it wrong. You are strange. You do not fit in. You will never understand them. You are alone." Liva covered her ears. "Make it go away." "You can meet it," said Unease gently. "I do not want to." "You are allowed to say that." Liva trembled. "I do not want to, but I also do not want to keep running forever." Holdfast stood behind her. Rumble took his place beside one of her feet. Swallow hovered by her shoulder. The Mirror Keeper lifted the water bowl. Unease spread her wings. Liva took the lantern. Her hand shook a little, but she lifted it. "I want to see what you really are," she said. The light touched the shadow. The 1,000 faces twisted. Some vanished. Others became smaller. At last, there was no monster in front of her, only a little girl made of grey mist. She sat on the floor with her knees pulled close to her chest. "I do not understand," whispered the fog girl. Liva lowered the lantern. "Are you me?" The fog girl said nothing, but Liva knew. The Great Unreadable was not an enemy. It was the part of her that became afraid when the world was too hard to read. Liva sat down on the floor in front of the fog girl. "I do not always understand either," she said. The fog girl looked up slowly. "But maybe we can take it in smaller pieces." The fog girl became a little clearer. "And we are allowed to bring things with us," said Liva. "Stones and keys and buttons. That does not mean we do not like people. It only means we need bridges." The fog girl reached out her hand. Liva took it, and in that moment, the library began to glow. Not wildly. more as if every small lamp inside every book was being lit, one after another. The book of the Dream Masters turned another page. The greatest magic is not making the dream perfect. The greatest magic is becoming a friend to the part of yourself you used to fear. The door behind them opened back out toward the sea, but now the sea looked different. The islands were still there. The boats still sailed with tiny lanterns on their masts. The forest whispered. The flying boy moved low over the water. The owl kept watch. Rumble sniffed a silver mushroom and sneezed. But in the middle of it all, there was a new island. It was small and round, covered in soft grass. On it stood a table with space around it. Not too close, not too far. Beside the table were shelves for stones, cups, feathers, keys, buttons, and other important things. "That is your island," said the Mirror Keeper. "Mine?" "Yes. Not an island where you must hide forever. An island where you can begin. A place where others may visit if they come gently." Liva looked out at the island. There was a bridge to it. Not a large bridge, just a simple wooden bridge with little lanterns. On a sign were the words, "Here you may belong in your own way." Liva smiled. "Can it be in Dreamland?" "Now it is in Dreamland," said Holdfast. "But can I find it again?" asked Liva. "If you remember the key," said Rumble. "But the key is in my box," said Liva. "Then remember the feeling of it," said Unease. Liva closed her hand around the key. It was warm. Then the whole landscape began to shimmer. The water, the islands, the forest, the table, the door, the library, the flyer, the boats, the lanterns. It was as if Dreamland took one deep breath. And Liva felt something she had never felt before. Not that she suddenly understood all people. She did not. Not that social things would suddenly become easy. They probably would not. But she felt that she had the right to exist among others without changing all of herself. She could have her box, her pauses, her things, her ways of being, her ways of listening, her place slightly to the side, her key, and still belong. "Is that how you become a dream master?" she asked. Swallow landed on her shoulder. "It is one of the ways." "By controlling your dreams?" asked Liva. "By learning that dreams can listen back," said Swallow. The Mirror Keeper nodded. "And by understanding that what is frightening is sometimes something inside you asking to be seen." Holdfast said, "And by building safe places, even when the landscape changes." Rumble added, "And by having snacks. Dream masters forget snacks far too often." Liva laughed, this time a little louder. The sound flew out over the water, and the little boats answered with tiny bells. Then the sky grew lighter. "It is morning," said Unease. "I do not want to forget," said Liva. "Then make a mark," said the Mirror Keeper. "In the dream?" asked Liva. "In the day," whispered Unease. When Liva woke, she was lying in her bed. The room was quiet. Her hand was still holding something. The key. She sat up and opened the box of quiet things. She placed the key in its place. But this time she did not arrange the things in the old row. She put the stone beside the button, the feather beside the flower, the string around the key, and the glass in the middle. A new order. Not wrong, just new. Then she took a small piece of paper and wrote, "I may belong in my own way." She placed the paper in the box with the things. Later that day, when she went to school, there were still sounds. Still chairs scraping, still faces she could not quite read, still the words group work on the board, making her stomach tighten. But Liva had the key in her pocket, not because she wanted to escape into things, because the thing was a bridge. When the group sat down, she chose a chair a little to the side, where she could still see the door. She took one slow breath. A girl at the table said, "Would you like to write things down? You are good at keeping track." Liva looked at her, surprised. Not directly into her eyes for too long. Just enough. "Yes," she said, "but please talk one at a time." The other girl nodded. "Okay." It was not magic in the way that everything became perfect. It was magic in a much larger way, because Liva stayed. She said a little, not much, but enough. And when the others began talking over one another, she put her hand around the key in her pocket and said, "Wait, I cannot follow when everyone speaks at once." And this time they did stop a little. not because they suddenly understood everything, but because Liva had given them a way in to her, a small bridge. That evening, when Liva lay down, she thought of Dreamland, of Rumble and the Mirror Keeper, of Holdfast and Unease, of Swallow and the Flyer above the sea, of the table where one could sit and still be included, of the island with the sign, of the book about the Dream Masters, of the fog girl who had not been a monster after all. Liva closed her eyes, and just before sleep came, she felt the key glow in her thoughts. Far away, between forest and sea, a little door opened. On an island of soft grass, lanterns lit one by one. There was a table, there was space around it. Not too close, not too far, just space. And if one listened carefully, one could hear a small voice say, "Here, you may belong in your own way." That was how Liva began to learn dream magic. Not in one night, not without fear. Not by becoming like everyone else, but by finding her tools in her own way. The light, the whistle, the mirror, the key, the quiet things, the pauses, the bridges, and the courage to say, "I am here, but I need it to be a little different." And perhaps it is like that for many children and grown-ups who feel a little outside. Perhaps they are not wrong. Perhaps they simply need different doors, different bridges, different ways to belong. Perhaps things, routines, collections, and quiet places can be the beginning of connection, not the end of it. Perhaps dreams can help us practice what the day makes difficult. Perhaps there is a small dream master inside everyone who dares to meet their own shadows with a lantern in their hand. If one night you dream something that feels too large, too frightening, or too confusing, you can try to remember Liva's tools. Not by fighting, just by stopping for a moment inside the dream. Lift a little light and ask, "What are you really?" Call for a friend, an owl, a tree, a little pile of leaves, or anything else that feels safe. Look at the dream from another angle. Make a door where there used to be a wall. And if you meet a part of yourself sitting on the floor like fog, whispering that it does not understand the world, you do not have to push it away. You can sit beside it. You can say, "I do not always understand either." But we can take it in smaller pieces. Because that is great magic, not having no fear, but taking fear by the hand, not fitting in everywhere, but finding and building places where you can belong. Not controlling every dream, but learning that even in the strangest dreams, you can choose one small next step. Far out in Dreamland, where the islands glow, where the boats sail, where the forest whispers, where the owl keeps watch, and where the wind carries those who practice flying, there is now a small island with a table, a box, and a key. And on the sign, it still says, "Here you may belong in your own way." And if one night you pass by that island, perhaps there will be a chair for you too. Maybe in the middle of the table, maybe a little to the side. Both are perfectly fine, because in Dreamland, the old beings know something the waking world sometimes forgets. That you do not have to look like everyone else in order to belong. That quiet can also be strong, that things can be bridges, that dreams can be places to practice, and that a dream master is not the one who is never afraid. A dream master is the one who learns to light a lamp when the dream grows dark, the one who dares to open the door, the one who finds their own way of being in the world, and who one day may discover that the place they thought they were standing outside of had a little secret entrance all along. An entrance that fit only their very own key. Good night, sleep very well.